So it says that I'm live, Jolene.
Okay, let me
I
check
can
it.
I can get on this link she sent, but
Oh yeah,
then
you're live. You're live right now.
Okay. So we're ready to go. Hello, everyone. We can go off of this one. And I can move it right here if you want. Hi, everyone. We're just getting this going here for our elder, Avis Archambault. You're going to have a great time with her.
Yay, Avis. Okay, I'm gonna hang up.
Okay. Hi, 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 hi. Just little technical issues, but we're going to get it rolling for you.
alrighty.
Yeah, you're good to go.
Can you enlarge this a bit?
We'll do the best that we can. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Good afternoon. Are we okay, Jolene?
Yeah, you're good to go.
Okay. Well, um, I guess I should introduce myself. I was on previously for just a few minutes one day, but my name is Avis Archambault. I'm La Colton Grovant, Anna, from Fort Belknap, Montana. Um, my grandma is from Fort Belknap, she Grovant, and that's where I was raised, and my grandpa is from Standing Rock. So I have those two bloodlines there, and very honored to be here today. Um, I suppose I should tell you a little bit about where I am, who I am. It's always hard to talk about yourself. uh, Born at Fort Belknap, and then as a kid, um, we really experienced a lot there. It's not a whole lot different today, somewhat. Um, my grandma Molly raised my brother John Spence, and myself, and Marcia, my sister, after my mom passed away when I was about 7. So we grew up at Fort Belknap, and in those days, it was like during the Depression, but we didn't know that. Our uncles and brothers and fathers and everybody hunted for everybody, so we always had plenty to eat. My grandma was an incredible gardener. We always had great food, and she canned. And then people shared everything, so it was never, we never felt a loss, really. I mean, a lack of anything. Um, at some point, we moved to Seattle, Washington, and my uncle had come back from World War II, and he was on a GI Bill, and so we all moved with him. You know how Indians do, to Seattle. And at that time, I had always wanted to dance. At that time, I started taking ballet, and I remember I loved it so much. I remember I told Grandma, just get me those shoes. I'll do something. I'll learn how. And I remember I had to babysit to learn to earn money for ballet class, and had to take 4 buses to get to downtown Seattle to do it. But I loved it. So I've danced all my life, and eventually I went on the racetrack with my father, John Spence. He had left us, with my Grandma Molly, when my mom passed away. And so at some point he came, and I went with him, and we trained racehorses and traveled around. And so that was a whole nother life that I loved for a time. And he wound up marrying a jockey, wound up in Phoenix, Arizona. At some point, uh, divorced that husband. I have 4 daughters, 4 grandchildren, and 2 great grandchildren. So I forget just when it was that I started college. I was probably in my 40s. I decided I wanted to go to college. I didn't have an idea of getting a degree, but I wanted to study philosophy because I read a lot. So I studied philosophy, and I also took painting classes because I had danced and painted ever since I was a kid. So those were my two loves. So long story short, I wound up getting a bachelor's in fine arts, painting and drawing, a double master's in dance, and in humanities, the studies of the world's cultures and religions, and then a doctorate. And so I think my Gram would just have been so proud because when we were little, she always talked to us about the value of education. And my Gram herself, she only went to the third grade. And I wanted to show you here. This is her. It's my Grandma Molly that raised John and Marcia and I. This is her as a young woman, Fort Belknap. Can't see it, but she's standing in front of a teepee, and she's in her regalia. Anyway, it was just so amazing to see what my Grandma did. I mean, in the third grade, she ran away from Hayes Mission because they were very abusive to the kids. And so the family hid her out. She never went back. But she was like a matriarch at Fort Belknap. All the women came to her, whether she was grandma and auntie and, mom to so many people. And I remember many times, especially on weekends, we'd be stepping over people in the living room because so many people came and they just stayed. She fed them, they went to sleep, they slept there, and drunks and all. And she'd sober them up and send them off again. So when I think about Graham, I think the thing that I most learned from her was her generosity. I mean, she had time for everybody. She helped everybody as much as she could. Whatever we had, we shared. In fact, everybody did back then. It was no big deal. Everybody shared everything. So that's a bit about me. And I was talking with Jolene and trying to decide what I would talk about. And I wound up making copious notes. Probably have enough notes here for about 4 days, but we'll get through some of them in an hour. And the subject I chose was how the modern science supports Native Indigenous values and healing. And there's so many resources right now where you can Google to find out what this new science, this quantum physics and the new science, they talk about the matrix, they talk about the field. And a good resource is Dr. Greg Braden, who is an incredible scientist and biologist and wonderful teacher. Another one is Bruce Lipton, who is the father of epigenetics, and you hear that everywhere now, epigenetics. And all it means is above the genes. And he coined that phrase because up until then, scientists, doctors, and everybody, biologists, were studying just our DNA, and they were studying, and when they extracted the DNA from the cells, they threw out the protein for some reason, which seems so silly, since protein is the building block of the body. But so he started doing different experiments with protein, and to make a long story short, he realized that every cell has a mind of its own, you can say. In the middle of the cell is the nucleus, and on the surface of the cell are these receptors. And he found that the receptors, he said, had a mind of their own, depending on what they chose. And then after they chose something, they continued to choose those kind of things. And we do that with since we're just a bundle of cells. And he coined the phrase, belief is your biology. because it starts, well, it starts with that, with all kinds of healing, all through the ages. People have known that, ancient people have known that, our people have known that the mind, the mind has a attitude, and it creates a belief. And that belief chooses what it wants to choose from the environment. Now, unfortunately, we know that all the people who have studied early childhood behavior have told us that that really all these attitudes we have, these beliefs we have, are probably not really us. Because as a tiny child from 0, maybe even before that, 0 to 6 or 7 or 8 years old, we're like a sponge absorbing all of these attitudes and beliefs and the images from our environment, and it's not always so good. You know, we get a lot of no, don't do that, a lot of no answers, and a lot of maybe rejection from certain parts of our environment, especially as Native people, like in Montana. We really experienced a lot of racism from the community around us, because I'm sure that everyone who has lived on the res anywhere, you know that the people in the nearest bordering town usually do not have such a great feeling about the Indians on the res. So anyway, this belief system that we build up from this early childhood stuff becomes our default operating system, if you will. So unless we have come to some level of awareness, we're still operating on that default system. So until we have reached some awareness, made a choice to do about something that has become very troublesome to us. You know, if you find yourself with some behavior you're always doing all the time, and you really don't like it, maybe you don't know where it comes from, but that's becoming your default system, and we really don't realize that. So, the modern new science talks a lot about that, about the programming we have, you know, where that has come from. There are all kinds of protocols nowadays to access various parts of the brain, to also access the superconscious, and to access what we now call the mind-body, because there's no separation really. And this goes right along with Native belief, because our ancestors always said, well, Lakota, there's a word called oyasi, and it's really hard to explain, because oyasi is just everything. It doesn't exclude anything. That's where the term mitaku oyasi comes from. All of my relations, that means. So when you think about that, this is oyasi. Now that's backwards here, so that's the word me in the middle. But you see, on one side you have, well, in the middle, of course, we have ourselves. On one side we have our family. And on the other side, we have, okay, opposite the family. Okay, below at the bottom there. Okay, we have the family on one side. At the bottom you see that the community there is depicted with teepees for us. On the other side we have the Mother Earth, the trees, the rivers, the streams, the mountains, all that. And then above we have the sky, we have the cosmos, we have the star nation. And as Native people, we're very connected to all those things. You hear a lot of talk about star nation in recent years, and I want to talk a little bit about that later. But this is our worldview for Native people. I remember Terry Tafoya, who's a Native psychologist, saying Native people have a concept of the family they call a nuclear family. He says our family is not like nuclear, it's more like fallout. It's everybody and everything. So that's what this is about. This is my worldview. This is my family. This is Oyase. This is Mitakuyase. This is everybody, everything. And our old people would tell us, everything is alive. Everything has a life and a power. The trees, the rivers, the streams, the rocks, everything has a life and a power. So the new science says yes, everything has a life and a power. Einstein first said it. He said, everything is energy. That's all there is to it. It can be no other way. This is not philosophy, this is physics. So he said it a long time ago, but nobody paid a whole lot of attention to that. In mainstream society, they're busy breaking down, here's me, here's my family, here's my work life, here's my play life, here's my leisure life, here's my religious life on Sunday. But it's not like that with Native people. We have this holistic view of life. It's, waking, sleeping, talking, dreaming, running, dancing, whatever. This is me, however I am in all of those situations, those areas of my life. So we do not compartmentalize our life. We do not compartmentalize it. We have a holistic view of life, and it covers all of those areas. And it's kind of like, if you can imagine a very still pond. If you throw a pebble in the middle of it and the waves go out, that's kind of like what we are. We're there in the middle, but everything that we do has a frequency. It's kind of broadcast out and out and out and out and out. It's unlimited. So everything that we do, we are affecting I'm not only affecting my life, whatever I do, I'm affecting the life of my family, my tribe here on Turtle Island, out through the world. And right now, this is very, very important for us to have this kind of view, this holistic view, because our country is in the middle of a crisis, and I'm not going to go into that very much. I could spend 2 hours on that, but you know what I'm talking about. And so there's a lot of anxiety right now. There's a lot of anxiety about just where we are in the world, what's going on. But whatever is going on, what I really want to encourage everybody to do is during this time when we're in shutdown, we have so much time to ourselves. Will you please take the time to get to know yourself? This is the biggest job we have in this world, on this planet at this time, to really, any time in history, to get to know ourselves. When we do not know ourselves and we do not respect ourselves and all the life around us, we wind up in these wars that we have had ever since history began that we know of. So in getting to know yourself, there's so many ways to do that. And I want to offer one little simple way right now. I talked about a little bit last time. To begin to anchor yourself and ground yourself. So whatever you're doing, I do this in the morning before I do anything else, is that and I want to quote my friend Theda Newbreast and say, this is an old Indian trick. This is an old Indian trick. Because all of our people really respected that life cord, that umbilical cord from our mother. So what they did, when that dried up, they took the baby's umbilical cord and they wrapped it in cotton and medicine, and they made a beautiful pouch. Maybe they beaded it. It was a very precious pouch. This was your life cord to your mother. And then there were many things that was done with it. One of the things that could be done with it is you would take that precious life cord of yours and you would bury it in the Mother Earth somewhere on your land. So you literally had a connection to the Mother Earth. So I want you to think about right now, I want you to just touch your umbilical cord, touch your belly button, Visualize that the cord is there, and you're going to send this cord deep, 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 way, way down into the Mother Earth. So far down it goes through the water, the crust, the rock, way down to the center of the earth to hang just above the fire. And then travel back up to your umbilical cord again. Now send the other inner part up your spine, out your fontanelle that used to be there open when we were born, out there, up, 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 way up into the heavens, past what we know as the heavens, out into the cosmos. So you are grounded, heaven to earth. And if you will feel that grounding, you will begin to have a different sensation about yourself. The more you do that, you can do it many times a day. Remind yourself, you know, that you have that grounding. Another thing that will help you, I remember Martin Highbury used to talk to us about innocence. And I had a friend, a Swami who's an East Indian, that would talk to us about innocence. And I had another grandma, an adopted grandma, who would talk to us about innocence. And one day I have a young friend, and she said, Avis, you amaze me because at times you're so innocent. And I just took that as such a compliment because we come into the world like that. And I think that anytime we can get in touch with that innocence again, that this is where that healing starts, because that's how you were before that early childhood stuff, right, that came up. And you learned all those things, maybe some of those negative things about yourself that isn't even you, that people said and you believed it. But there is a part of you that still knows that innocence. And if you can begin to get in touch with that, that's where your healing begins. And I had a very wise friend who did this. He said, find some event with innocence. And right away, the thing that snapped for me was I was in Fort Belknap. I was walking along the street. I think I was maybe 6 or 7. And I felt lit up. I mean, I just felt, whoa, like I was glowing. I'm just walking along the street on an ordinary day, and the sun is so bright, shining on me. As I looked down, the Mother Earth was so alive. I mean, it was just shining. I looked around, and there was beautiful weeping willow tree. And there was dew on it. It was glistening in the sun. And oh my God, it was brilliant. And I looked up, and the sky was the most beautiful robin's eggs blue. And all I said was to myself, oh my God, don't they know what we have here? And as old as I am, I still can feel that day. So that's my innocent place. And when I am not feeling well, or I'm trying to do something, I go back to that place. And I want to invite you to do that. And maybe not right now, but will you sometime today, will you find some place in your life where you had that kind of innocence? Maybe you were a tiny child and you couldn't even verbalize it, but you had a feeling about that. Or maybe you were older, maybe you were even an adult and you had like a deja vu, where you had a flash of something and you felt that total innocence. It's just really where your spirit is, that magnificent spirit we have that's connected to everything, and you felt that connection. Sometime today or very soon, would you find a place like that? And when you do, there's many ways of healing, but one way is to connect with the superconscious, because the new science tells us we have the unconscious, we have the conscious, we have the superconscious, and all consciousness. And then another way to say it is that's the matrix or that's the field. It's like we're swimming in a field, a soup field of energy. It's everything is alive. So if you can get in contact, talk to your superconscious. You can call it the higher self. You can create any kind of name you want, but make a connection with that. And when you feel that innocence, take your knuckle and feel that innocence and anchor that feeling right there on that knuckle. And whenever you feel some way, take a hold of that and massage that and go back to that innocent place. It touches the inner, the outer, and everything else. And that will help you. And when you're in that spot, you can start talking to the Creator, to the universe, to the field, to Oyase, to your ancestors, and you can make another kind of connection. You can do something with that. So the belief that we have causes every cell in your body to attract what it needs. Among our people, we have a lot of problem with alcoholism, say, and drugs. Now, if you're recovering from that, think back to when you were in the throes of that, when you considered yourself an alcoholic. I really don't like those labels. I'm only using it because you know what I mean. It's in use. Everybody uses that term. So when you were feeling like that and you were using, I'm pretty sure you did not have such a great feeling about yourself. You might have felt worthless. You might have felt helpless over that. You might have felt you would not be able to get out of that. But those of you that have recovered from that and are recovering, what is your attitude now? Well, I'm sure your belief is that I'm a good person. I'm a worthy person. I have a right to be happy. I have a right to the best things in life. I'm ready, willing, and able to heal. All of those kinds of things. So can you see now, those are the things you're attracting, right? Those are the things you're attracting in your life. And every cell in your body believes that. It knows that. The mind body knows that. That's how you feel about yourself now. And that's what you are attracting. That's what your life is manifesting there and bringing to you. Our ancestors would say, have a good mind. That's one of the teachings of this man, and a lot of you know him, Martin Heiber. He was one of our wonderful, wonderful teachers for so long. He always had a good mind about everything. I remember back in 1982, my house totally burned to the ground. I had been on a sacred journey about that I'm not going to talk about here, but when I got home, I called Martin. I said, "Oh, Martin." I said, "Martin, my home burned up to the ground." He goes, "Good." He said, "Good." You know how these old people, they always say everything's good. So he said, "Oh boy." He said, "You just had a big giveaway. So now the spirits are really going to give you something." And they did. But that's how these old people felt about everything. They knew that you had to have a good mind. So he didn't need anybody to tell him, my mind body has these cells that have a good attitude about me now, and as I project that attitude out and think those good thoughts, I get only good stuff. He didn't have to say that. All he had to say was, have a good mind. Have a good mind. And he knew that you would attract those kind of things. The new science says with the field, the matrix, we're all connected. And then we just say, Mitaku Oyasi, we're all connected, we're all related. they also, the new science talks about vibration and frequency. And Martin didn't need to talk about vibration and frequency because he knew that when you have a good mind, it's a very high frequency. Don't you feel good? Don't you just feel energized? When you're not feeling well, your frequency is very low and your feelings follow that. And as a doctor in acupuncture, I've learned that actually every organ has a feeling. Every organ has a feeling associated with it, and affects, certain parts of our body, mentally, physically, in various ways. For instance, if you have experienced a lot of grief, this has an impact upon your lungs. And then every organ has a outside window to the world. So the lungs, the window to the world for the lungs is the skin. And if any of you have had, like we did in childhood, our family had a lot of skin stuff. And only as I got older and researched it, I realized it went way, way back to the time when we were given smallpox blankets by the U.S. Cavalry. So back there, my great-great-grandma was given those blankets. So that skin stuff, I'm off the, just went off. Sorry, we're having trouble playing this video. I don't know if would you call Jolene, see if the sound is still on? The video is off. If you're listening, we're having technical problems here. The video just shut off. Robert is trying to address that.
As far as I know, you're still on, Avis.
I'm on.
Yeah, keep talking.
Okay, so we don't have video, but I'm going to go on until we do.
So yeah, you're still on.
Oh, I'm on?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I guess I can't see me, but I guess you can see me. Okay, so all of that, the field, everything, Oyasi, all consciousness has a frequency. In Lakota we call it Takushkan Shkan. It means all sacred moving power. So it's the same thing as energy, as chi. There's many words for it in science, frequency. So every thought has a frequency. And the intensity of that frequency and the feeling you have connected with that determines what you're going to draw to yourself. What you will draw to yourself. So I think it makes sense. And it behooves us to somehow find ways that will lift our spirits, help our mind, take care of our body. And the things we need for the body, of course, are water, air, exercise. So all of those things impact how I feel as a mind, body, as an energy field. If you research the energy field of the earth, you will see it's like a donut. It's a torus. So there is a toroidal field around the earth. It's like a donut. So it comes from a vortex, it comes up, and it comes clear around the earth, down, and it comes up again. So there's this constant toroidal movement around the earth, within, above, around the earth. There is also that field around our body. So there's a field around our body that comes up, circles our body, down. This is a constant movement of this energy. So depending on your feelings and thoughts, the frequency of that whole field is going to change. Or there will be times when you disrupt. Am I still on? And there will be times when you disrupt that field. And at those times, when you become aware of that, of course, you'll know because you're not feeling well, something's going on, whether your thoughts are stuck in some place or your feelings are stuck somewhere. And usually it's some leftover childhood thing. It's usually something from that unconscious mind, your default programming. Yeah, it's like the default programming. It's like your operating system default. We go back to that all the time unless you're aware. That's what helps you when you're driving down the street. I don't know how many times I've experienced where all of a sudden I realize I've been driving, that I haven't even been aware of how I'm driving for the last 5 to 7 minutes. So at those kind of times, our autonomic nervous system and our default operating system, our unconscious mind, has been programmed to driving, for many, many years, and it just takes over and helps you do that. And it will take over any time that you do not consciously choose. So half the time, throughout the day, probably 90% of the time, psychologists predict that 90% of the time we're going on our default operating system. So if something happens and it rubs you the wrong way and you're stuck in some place that triggered something from your childhood, if you can realize at that time, hey, whoops, I'm on my default programming again. And the thing is, as human beings, we have a choice. And that's what makes us so powerful. We have a choice, and choice is very powerful. So you can choose at any time to take yourself out of that default programming. You don't have to fall back into that all the time. And by the way, the more that we dwell on that, the more that we dwell on those particular problems, traumas, whatever they are that we experience, we actually compound that. The scientists tell us now, and the sociobiologists tell us now that when we relive that event that triggered us, our unconscious doesn't really know if it's real. Well, it feels real. It feels real. That may have happened to you at age 7 or 4, but you relive it again and you're rewounding yourself over again. So when we start telling all these war stories over and over and over, you're rewounding yourself again. When you tell something that causes you pain, you're rewounding your heart. When you talk about a story that causes you grief, you're rewounding the lungs. When you talk about a story that makes you so angry that you're livid, you're rewounding your liver gallbladder. And how many people do we know that have lost their gallbladder? It had to be removed. And by the way, there are now ways to flush the gallstones and all that. You don't have to lose your gallbladder. There's treatment for that. Natural treatments where you can get rid of those stones. I did myself. Because we all have those times, it's really impacting our liver and gallbladder when we choose to kind of stay at that level where we're always angry, we're always ready to pick at something or someone, or we're, get up in the morning and nothing looks right to you, and then the day goes like that, and you stay in that default programming. Well, you don't have to choose to do that. You can choose not to do that. Again, there's so many ways to choose. And there's a lot of, there's Indian medicine ways to do that, but I don't feel comfortable on this venue of this little box and going out who knows where to talk about some of those things. There are appropriate places and ways to do that. And but there are a lot of natural ways of healing. There's just things we do with the voice. There's talking, praying, singing, laughing. These are natural ways of healing. And then the things we do with the rest of the body. There's running, there's dancing, there's sweating, and there's shaking. Now, if you think about it, many of our ceremonies have all of those things in one place. That's how powerful our ceremonies are. A ceremony might combine all of those things. That's why they're so powerful. When people go to church, I don't think that they realize that the singing they're doing there, or the praying that they're doing there, is just one compartmentalized part that came from ceremony. So ceremony is our grand therapeutic vehicle. Ceremony, if you had only ceremony alone, you could heal everything. Because all of these other things came from ceremony. The dances that some people do, the sacred songs that some people do, certain ways of moving the body, all of these things came from ceremony. So all of the indigenous peoples of the earth were given their own kinds of ceremony and their own sacred ways of expressing that, and their own instruments to use. And all our instruments are made from the Mother Earth, right? The drum, the flute, all kinds of instruments that came from the Mother Earth. So you're combining not only your own frequency, you're using the frequency of the earth. Because our original drums were logs hollowed out on the ground. And then they were hollowed out and they put a skin over it. Then we had a drum like we see nowadays, And then we take branches from the trees and there was a flute. And it produced the most wonderful sounds. So the sounds that come from a natural instrument are some of the highest frequencies in the world. I don't know if you can see behind me. Can they see this behind me? Robert, can they see this behind me? Mm-hmm. If you can see behind me, behind me, I have this setup. They look like music chimes, but this is actually a healing instrument for the whole body. Every part of the body has a frequency. So when you sound that particular frequency, the body tries to rise up to match that healing frequency. There's this whole part for the body and for the brain over there. So at times I use that for people. But some of the best frequencies come from playing the guitar, singing, playing drums, flute, any kind of piano, any kind of acoustic instrument, because that's made from some part of the earth, is some of the highest frequencies that you can use. Miniwi choni, miniwi choni, miniwi choni, miniwi choni. Many of you went to Standing Rock, as I did too, with my brother John. In fact, I went once with John, but my brother went back. He went back there 3 times. And he was back there with the vets, and they made quite an impression there, and they did really good work there. But when we were at Standing Rock, it was an amazing thing because it was the fulfillment of a prophecies among many, many of our people. Martin used to tell us, there's going to come a time in your lifetime, he would say to us, in your lifetime, that the Mother Earth is going to throw up and purify herself. And Native people are going to be instrumental in kicking off a huge healing that's going to heal the Mother Earth. But it's going to start here on Turtle Island. So when our people start coming together Something's going to happen. And then they're going to feel strong enough to start standing up for who they are. And they're standing up for the earth. And then it's going to start this gigantic feeling that cannot be stopped. It will just go and go and go till it expands throughout the world. And I remember before I ever went to Standing Rock, it's the main reason I got on Facebook, to find out what my relatives were doing there and who was going and how our people were coming together and what was happening. And it was so exciting because every day on Facebook, new people were coming in and expressing themselves and talking about their people as sovereign people and putting some action behind it. And so when I got to Standing Rock, I tell you, I wish so much that Martin could have been there with us, and Brave Buffalo, and my grandma, and so many people that have helped me so much, that knew that this was going to happen. So when we were there, I have never felt such unity, such togetherness when I was among my people. It was totally amazing. I don't know how many hundreds of tribes were there. When you arrive, you drive down this avenue of flags from everywhere. And it was so wonderful to see each group of each tribe or each community, group of people coming in. And they were in their regalia. They were coming in singing their songs. They would come into the big circle in the middle, and they would talk to the people about where they came from, why they were there. And it was overwhelming. I mean, I had tears continually almost every day, tears of joy. It was just bliss being there. You get up in the morning and walk down the hill, and, several people stop you all the way. Hey, how are you? Where are you from? You had your coffee yet? You had something to eat? Where are you staying? It was so incredibly wonderful. 10 minutes? Okay. It was just so incredibly wonderful. But the main reason that everybody chose to be there was the call went out. We have to protect the water. And so among our people, we didn't consider that protest. We call ourselves water protectors. And some of you may have, can I see this?
It's on a delay, so I gotta wait to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I hope you can see this. This is a water molecule. This is a pure water molecule that has been prayed over and sung over. There's a Japanese scientist called Masaru Emoto, and he's done research just on water. And in his book, you will see just a blob of old dirty river water. And then they prayed over it and sang over it, and it transformed itself into a pure crystalline structure, like it was in its innocence, in its creation. So if you think about it for a moment, we're 70–80% water. So within our bloodstream, there are many, many of these tiny crystals. And as you begin to heal yourself, as you sing, as you pray, these little crystals in your body begin to revert to their pure, crystalline, powerful structure. So every time that you encounter water, whether you're drinking water, offer it to the four directions. Whether you're standing under your shower, pray with that water. In your language, you really have a name for it. Lakota's name is, we say mini wichoni, water is life. I say that when I'm in the shower and let that water bless me like that. And then I go to a park near here where there's a running water, and I do my own version of a qigong with a toroidal field around me with that water, because you can wash yourself with the water, send it back to the earth. Wash yourself with the water, send it to the sky, send it to the earth. you don't have to be physically with water to work with water, but certainly whenever you touch water or drink water, you can work with it. Well, there are so many other things that I intended to talk about. We have just a few minutes here. About how much time do we have?
About 7.
7 minutes? Okay, I want to tell you a story about resilience when I was a kid. I didn't know that's what was happening, and I'm sure my relatives didn't know that was happening. They wouldn't have said, gee, this is resilience. They wouldn't have called it anything. But when I was a kid, World War II was just over, and my uncle was coming home that helped raise us. And in Harlem, Montana, between Harlem and the agency, there was an internment camp for Japanese American families at the edge of town, the west end of town and the reservation. And it was it had a fence all around it like a prison, this rolled barbed wire fence. And one day I'm riding my bicycle along, and I come to this fence and I go, and I'm looking at it. It's huge, big, huge, tall. And I look, and then I lay down in the tall grass. I'm watching because these soldiers came by. They had a gun on their shoulders. These soldiers are marching by, and they're talking in a language I never heard before. And then I look around there, and I see all of these little cabins, and in there are families inside this big, like a prison. And so there's these families there. And I'm laying there watching all this, and the soldiers come by, and they see me laying there in the grass, and they start laughing like mad. And a couple of them came over, they're pointing at me, they're laughing. I don't know what they're saying, but I stand up, and I had some gum, so I could offer them some gum, and they took it. And they're laughing, and they went away. And I don't remember just what was said or how it was done. The next thing I remember, these soldiers are at my house, my grandma's house, where she raised us. And these soldiers, we find out, are from Puerto Rico. So think about this divide and conquer scenario. Here you have these poor, unfortunate Japanese American families with children, in this internment camp, like a prison. Guarding, and where is it? It's on the edge of a reservation. They can't speak our language, we can't speak theirs. And who's guarding them? People from another indigenous community, the Puerto Rican soldiers. So actually, people would think, well, these 3 different indigenous people wouldn't know how to communicate. Well, we must have, because I remember they're at Grandma's house, and these soldiers are crying and they're singing for us. They got their guitars, and I still remember some of those songs. Mama, mama, you quiero. You know, they would sing to us. The kids were up there dancing to those Puerto Rican songs, and Grandma's feeding them, and they're crying and talking to her about their families. They miss their families. And then we gave those soldiers some of our clothes and stuff to take to those Japanese families inside there. So here it was, we wound up taking care of each other somehow. My people took care of those soldiers took that to those people in there. And I'm sure after having that experience with us, that they even watched over those people even more closely. So that's a resilient story if I ever heard one. Somehow we overcame all of those things, that we had different languages, we were from different places, and everybody was in, you might say, an oppressive situation, all 3 of our people. But we overcame that. We came together and we helped each other. So I often think of that and think, wow, if that's not resilience, I don't know what is. So I really want to thank Native Wellness for all the work it does. I want to thank my brother friend here, Robert. I used to work with Robert's dad too, Roy. Hello, Roy, if you ever watched this. You've got a son to be very proud of. And Roberta, his mom, what a woman. Yeah, I've seen her Tina Turner act. In fact, I did backup for her one time. I did backup for Tina.
Do you
But-
want to answer a question?
If it's not a real, do you think it'll take a long? Go ahead. Let's see.
What emotions are tied to the stomach?
Oh, to the stomach. It's kind of a repository for all of them because, liver, gallbladder is anger and, and then kidney is terror and fear. But you feel it in your stomach every time you feel a so-called negative emotion from anywhere else. It's kind of a repository for any kind of negative, so-called negative, intense negative feeling that you feel. It's going to be anchored there for some time.
Mm.
Yeah. But so we change our life by changing our belief. So when we begin to believe, yes, I'm a beautiful, magnificent spirit, and you walk with that kind of realization, and every time you start to fall into your default programming, remind yourself, I'm aware, I'm alive, I have a job to do in this time, this is what I chose to do. It's a wonderful time because there'll never be, my relatives, it will never, never go back to the way it was. That's gone. And don't settle for the so-called new normal. This is not normal. This is not normal. But we must create a new normal. And whatever thoughts we have and beliefs, these go out like waves. Don't you know I belong to 4 or 5 different kind of groups around the world, and they pray at certain times, and I know that this goes out, 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 and I know that this helps to hold up the life, that we're living, to keep us from, diving into despondency. So our belief really is our biology, and we really can create what we need. We can create what we need to sustain ourselves. When we remember the generational trauma, and they say that generational trauma keeps impacting us. Well, don't you know, my relatives, those generations, they had solutions too. So not only is that sea of generational trauma, there is a sea of solutions out there. Solutions. Old things that still work. Everybody's just now rediscovering them, so they think it's something new. Our old ones always knew that. So we have those solutions, not just the generational trauma, generational solutions. And I used to hear talk about the poor little child, the inner child. It was the big therapies for a while. This poor little inner child. Well, on the other side, there's an inner grandma. There's an inner grandma and inner grandpa. That's the one you need to listen to. Because that one is old, has never died, never will. That old grandma or grandpa is always there for you. And then you can always ask your relatives too. Your spirit guides your relatives. So I guess, I don't want to run overtime. But I really want to thank you, Jolene, and Native Wellness. Want to thank my brother Finn here for help. The Johnston Oyate for helping me. Itakuyasi.
Thank you, everyone. Oh man, it went all the way out, didn't it?